this started. My standard disclaimer when I'm starting services over at Christ House is we know we have folks that trickle in late, and just make them feel welcome as they do. I try to encourage folks to think of coming together at church as less of coming to attend a show and more of a family gathering. At a family gathering, you have some things you sketched out on the agenda that you want to get done, but people show up when they show up, and you're excited to see everybody, and that's normal. So we try to do both. We'll have some things we want to get done here, make sure folks feel welcome. I'm going to let BJ introduce himself and share about his ministry. For some of you guys, you've known about his ministry for a lot of years, and you're excited to get updates. You're probably really excited to see photos of people who are older than the last time you saw photos of them. And for others of you going, BJ, who? Where does he come from? The EC Church has missionaries? Really? You've got lots of questions. So I encourage them at the end. We'll probably open up for some Q&A. So we think about what questions you might want to ask, because it's a lot easier to find out what's going on in the field when he's here. Though granted, we live in a day and age where he's more accessible than past generations. So let me open us in prayer. Father, you are good. We gather because of your Son. His death as payment for our sin made it so that we could be adopted by faith into this global family that gives us a mission here in Rossville, in Lancaster County, but also around the world, to see all people be invited to find forgiveness of sin through faith in you. And so as we listen, God, give us a heart of unity, to care about what you're doing in other countries, to intercede and support that, but also give us a heart of mission to realize we're missionaries here as well. We have the same calling. And so mobilize us in this time and be glorified from the testimonies that are shared here. In the name of Jesus, amen. All right, BJ, I'm going to hand over to you.
You all came out on a Tuesday evening. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. That's well done. Thank you, and thank you. I feel honored because there are a lot of people who would not show up on a Tuesday evening to hear me talk, including my wife and daughter. So both daughters are otherwise occupied. Miriam, so Miriam is the blonde, third to the left there. Well, third to the right, actually, so next to her mother there. She's in Kentucky right now, serving with the Trinity EC Church in Lidditz, their youth group. They're doing a kind of a service week mission trip in eastern Kentucky. And Laura and Rachel, not really feeling, it's been a full week, and so they're kind of worn out. And so they said, if it's okay, maybe you just go. And so I'm really happy to be here, and I'm super happy that you're here. So for those of you who don't know, we've been missionaries for about 16 years, a little over 16 years in Spain, a few different parts of Spain. We lived for a year in southern Spain in the city of Córdoba. Then we lived for 10 years doing pioneer church planting in eastern Spain in a small town called Alcora, so about an hour north. The largest city close to us would have been Valencia, where the oranges come from. And for the past 5 years, we've been living and serving in the town of Meco, which is just outside of Madrid. So we're about half an hour outside of the capital. Still in the province of Madrid, but not in the city, because we aren't city folk. We're town folk. We'll get into a little bit more about that later on. So anyway, the last time I was here, I think, was maybe spring 2008. I think. And so a lot has changed since 2008. I think Pastor Tim said something about people getting older. I don't know if you're excited to see me that I've gotten older. Rachel, yeah, we're the same age. But in 2008, we didn't have kids. So those are our two daughters, Miriam, Laura. Miriam is 15. And is already thinking about college and university and planning visits even this summer, because we're not often in the States. So about every 3 years. So it's a good opportunity for her to see some things and explore the future. Laura is 13, going on 30. depending on the moment. And so we're enjoying this week that we have just her at home so that she gets individualized attention. And I think she's enjoying that a bit as well, not sharing all the attention with her sister. So let me take you back to 2022. Now, this was our prayer card in 2022. As you can see, our daughters both have grown a bit. People tell me, oh, you haven't changed a bit. My knees beg to differ. They continue. I run. I like to run, but my knees tell me you need to slow down. You're 45 now. You're not 42. So we were actually on the plane in St. Louis, close to where my parents live in Missouri, on our way back to Spain, starting that journey back home. And I've gotten into the habit, you could maybe call it a spiritual discipline, I don't know, but the habit of asking Jesus questions, particularly in particular situations, certain moments that I think it would really be helpful to have Jesus' wisdom and insight here. And so we're on the plane sitting, waiting for takeoff, 2022, September 2022. And I just said, Jesus, do you have a word for us as we go back to Spain, the next 3 years that we're going to be there? A word of encouragement, a word of caution even. And it doesn't always happen this way, but the word that I heard almost immediately was the word battle. The word battle. And I couldn't shake this word. I kept hearing this word battle all throughout the flight, even on the next flight, the transatlantic flight. Finally, I couldn't shake the word, and I looked over to Rachel and I said, just as I've been praying and listening to Jesus, I keep getting this word battle for our next 2 or 3 years in Spain. And Rachel just kind of looked at me and she said, you just had to ask. Like, sometimes ignorance is bliss, and it's better just to follow Jesus in the moment, whatever comes. Now we know something's coming. And it reminded me of something that has helped me understand the world and the story that we live in. Reminded me of something that John Eldridge wrote in a book, maybe in several books. He said this. He said, we live in a love story, but it's set in the context of a war. And that's very orienting. It helps us to understand where we are, what we're doing, why do things happen the way that they do, and what is our relationship with God in the story. And so he says we live in a love story, but that love story is set in the context of a fierce war. And that's what we see all throughout Scripture. When you look at the Old Testament, you see a love story, but you see a whole lot of battle, a whole lot of war going on. In fact, even in the Psalms, some scholars estimate that more than 100 times there's a reference to battle. When we look at the teachings and the life of Jesus, you see the theme of battle. The teachings of Paul and Peter, John, all of their lives, you see this theme of battle coming up again and again. And that's what we've been reminded of. That's what really the story that we've been living in the past 3 years. And so what I'd like to do is just share about a few of the battles that we've been facing, and some of the reminders, truths, and lessons that we've been learning, that Jesus has been teaching us or reminding us on different fronts in life and in ministry over the past few years. And so here's battle lesson number 1, which should seem obvious. Spiritual battle is real. It's not figurative, it's not merely metaphorical, it is real. And Paul, when he's writing to the Ephesian Christians, he says this, and this is a word for us as well, 2,000 years later. He says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms, principalities and powers. And so as we went back to Spain in 2022, we were actually rather excited because God had opened a door. It was a kind of an unexpected door for Spain, where we were coaching baseball in Miriam and Laura's school, and they went to a Spanish Catholic school. So the idea of baseball working in Spain, where soccer is king, was just unbelievable. And the fact that their Catholic school gave us permission to share Bible verses and connect baseball and sports with life using biblical stories and values was just this wide open door that we did not expect to happen in Spain. And so we get back on a Thursday morning. I think it was Thursday, September 8th. The following Wednesday, September 14th or so, I get a call from the after-school programs director, and he just said, "Hey, BJ, we start after-school programs in a few weeks. Just wanted to check in that everything's on course. Do you need anything before we start?" And so we had a great conversation there for a few minutes. I bumped into a couple of parents that morning as well, and they said, "You're offering baseball this year again. Our sons loved baseball. They've seen it in movies and in American TV, but to be able to play it with a real live American, that's just, what an opportunity." And so that was Wednesday morning. Wednesday evening, the same after-school programs director calls me, and he says, "Look, BJ, I'm just the messenger, but baseball's been canceled. I can't tell you why. The school, or the board of directors, they met together and they just said, baseball's been canceled." And it turns out there was a new school director, a new Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. We suspect it had something to do with him finding out that we were evangelical Christians. We don't know for sure, but we suspect that had something to do with it. And there was absolutely nothing that we could do about it. The parents of the kids who came to baseball club, 20-some kids who were coming to baseball club, the parents were outraged. They wrote an angry letter to the director. He didn't give a flying flip about it. We met with him to try to reason with him, and he would not change his mind. There was nothing that we could do. He did not care. It had been canceled. And so, we were integrating, we were meeting a need and a desire amongst the kids, connecting with them, with their parents, using baseball and the Bible. Like, what could be better than that for a kid from small town America like me? But do you think when Jesus is working and opening doors like that, do you think that the enemy just kind of stands by and says, "Yeah, go ahead, no big deal"? The enemy will find ways to discourage and dishearten us and to close doors that have been opened. And I don't mean to be alarmist, but it's true. That's what we've lived, and we've seen it time and time again. And so we were pretty discouraged. And I remember one day, we were sitting around the table after lunch, just discussing things, processing things. I mean, even Miriam and Laura, they were outraged, and rage can kind of be creative as well, because they were expressing, like, what I would do if I bumped into the school director, if I found him in a dark alley, what I'd tell him? I would send him to, and rage can be pretty creative, we found out. But it came out of deep discouragement, and we felt a bit like Paul when he's writing to the Corinthians. In 2 Corinthians 1, he says this, he says, "We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of even life itself." We weren't that far down the road of despair, but we were discouraged. And he says, "But this happened so that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God." What kind of God is this? He's the God who raises the dead. And so we had a dream and an opportunity that died. And then God resurrected him. And it became not just baseball club for one school and the kids in one school. It became a baseball camp for the whole town, for kids from all over our town. And we worked with the town hall to bring, actually in one of our supporting churches in the EC denomination, there's an ex-major leaguer who has his own baseball academy, Jeff Bianchi, down in Lancaster. And he's in the church in Willow Street, and we made this connection, and he fell in love with our town, and he came in 2023. And it's not just a baseball camp, like the town hall gave us permission to share Jesus through this as well. They said, as long as you put that you're Christians on the publicity, you're not deceiving anyone. And so we got to share Jesus every day, and the team got to share Jesus every day with the kids. 2023. We had about 32 kids the first year. 2024, we had nearly 50 kids participate in this baseball camp. And probably one of the more remarkable things happened when it just so happened that the team came the first week of July. Now, there's a pretty important American holiday that happens during that week. And so our team in Spain, we thought, well, why don't we take advantage? We've got a group of Americans here. What if we do just like a big American party in the park to celebrate the 4th of July? And I thought, well, what better way to open a party like that than me playing the Star Spangled Banner on my electric guitar with extra distortion? The team thought that was a little over the top, and I don't understand. But, there is a big Spanish flag in the middle of the park. We thought that might be disrespectful. So we came up with Plan B. And Plan B was this. Why don't we invite the town councilman who's been helping us with all of the paperwork, the authorizations to do these events? Why don't we invite him to come and throw out the first pitch? Because we want to do a baseball, kind of a demonstration of the kids from camp. And so he comes, I welcome him, thank him profusely for how he's just opened doors and helped us out. He grabs the mic from me and he says, actually, we as a town should be the ones thanking you. You've organized this event, you've blessed our town, and this has been, you're sharing solid values, and they're Christian values, and we thank you, and the doors are wide open here for you to continue these kinds of activities in the future. And so seeds have been sown, doors have been reopened that we thought were closed. And we would love it if you would pray for the seeds that have been planted through these camps and through the relationships that were created there. But I told you that so I could tell you this. Just to remind you, and I think you know this, the spiritual battle is real. It is real. Because, whether you're talking about baseball or you're talking about marriage, like if you want a marriage that thrives throughout not just the years but the decades, you are going to face battles. If you want to raise your kids in a way that they follow Jesus in a real, authentic way, there are going to be battles. If you want a church that really is coming together and is growing deeper in their love for Jesus and reaching out at the same time in a healthy way, you're going to face battles in one way or another. If God puts a dream on your heart, and it really is from Him, there's going to be a battle as you pursue that dream. And so we live in a world where there are battles, and it's real. And so I've just got 2 questions for you to reflect on. Do you live every day knowing that the battle is real? Spiritual battle, it's a real thing. Do you live that way? But maybe even more importantly, for those of us who live aware of that battle, is this question. Do you realize the power of the God that we serve? Because He is the God who raises the dead. There's no limit to His power. And that is the power that we have with us, around us, and in us when we're walking with Him. And so we don't need to fear the battle, and we better not ignore the battle. We need to simply follow Jesus into the battles that He's leading us into with His power and with the courage that gives us. So the spiritual battle is real. Battle lesson number 2 that we've been reminded of over the past few years is that the battle is on the offensive. Let me explain this here. When we look at Ephesians chapter 6 and we see the armor of God, a lot of that armor, some of that armor, is defensive. You think of the helmet of salvation or the breastplate of righteousness. Those are more defensive pieces of armor. Offensive, to take and attack. So you have opponents as well. And so often, at least in circles where I've been, when we talk about the armor of God and we talk about spiritual warfare, we kind of talk about defensive protection. But God does not always call us to the defensive. He often calls us out on the offensive, to go out on mission with Him. Just think of, the book of Joshua, where God is calling His people the promised land that He's giving to them. So thinking about towns, let me tell you a little bit about our town. It's the town of Mickle, town of about 16,000 people. No evangelical church as of a year and a half ago. And I remember about 6-7 years ago, my father-in-law, Ron, um, who'd been served as a missionary in Spain for 47 years. He knew that we were in a moment of transition in eastern Spain. We were seeking God and His will for us, what the next chapter would be. And he said, well, why don't you consider coming to the province of Madrid? And there's this town right next door, Meco, you've been there. There are Christians living there, but no one has really figured out how do we plant a church in that community. So why don't you consider coming here? And so we ended up moving there, not realizing that we were going to be involved in a church plant at first, and we weren't at first. But last year, God led us to become a part of a church planting team, to plant a new church in our town that would focus on intentional community and intentional life-giving discipleship and growth in small groups that would really emphasize spiritual, emotional, and relational health, because many of us had come from places and churches where there really wasn't a whole lot of relational and emotional health. Intentional connection with our community, not to be so inwardly focused that we forget that really the church's mission is to reach out to the people around us. And of course with weekly celebrations of worship. And so a year and a half ago we started with 4 families, about 15 of us. And that has grown over the past year and a half, and we're now about 9 families and 40 of us that are gathering regularly for worship, but also in small groups and discipleship there, because we've realized God has called us out on the offensive. And when I say on the offensive, I don't want you to misunderstand me and think, oh, this is totally militaristic sort of stuff. No, God calls us out on the offensive with faith, with His love, with healing, transforming community, restoration in people's lives. And so let me tell you just about one couple that's come to be a part of our church community over the past year and a half. Their names are Ricardo and Karina. So you could call them Ricky and Carrie if you wanted to. Last summer they began to just become a part of our community. And they said, when they came, they said, look, we've been Christians for years, and we've lived here in our town for 4 or 5 years. And we've been praying that someone would come. You know, we're not church planters. We're not trained in this sort of thing, but we are Christians. But we've been praying that God would send someone to our town to start something like this for years and years. And you guys are the answer to 4 or 5 years worth of prayers. Because we don't always have the use of a car. We can't always travel to another town or another city to worship with other believers. But we're just so thankful that you're starting this community here in our town. And then later that summer, Ricardo, in one of our worship times, we're just praying together, about 15 of us, a small group of us, that Sunday morning. And he said, you know, would you guys pray for me? Because I just have this sense that God has more for me, that I really want to recover all of the image of God that He's destined me to have. I want to be the man that He's created me to be for my family, for my daughter, for my wife. God has more wife as well. And in the fall, they caught us after worship time, worship gathering one morning, and they said, you know what? God is bringing something alive in us that we've really never experienced this way before. You know, we've attended churches before, but we've never really been involved in a community like this. We can see how we're growing in a deep and real and rich way as a part of this church community. And then this spring, we asked Karina on Easter Sunday morning to do a reading based on the life of Mary Magdalene for our whole church community that morning. And she was just amazed that she would even be asked to do that in front of everyone as a part of a church community. Ricardo, another Sunday, he led the worship service. He was amazed that he was even capable of doing that. He didn't think that he could. Then he became a part of our men's small group that we did the Wild at Heart experience together for 6 or 7 weeks. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But he began to process his story with his father, with his life experience. He began to process that with Jesus in the safety of a community of men, and I would say good men working with him. And this couple, they are just growing in beautiful and deep ways. They're growing deeper in their love for Jesus. It's showing in their lives, in their marriage, in their family. And the latest thing is that they came to us as kind of the core leadership team, and they said, you know, we've got, family in our town, and they don't know Jesus, but they need to know Jesus. What can we do to reach out to them? Could we show the chosen? Could we just do something because they need Jesus? We want to be on mission with Jesus. And they have an evangelistic heart. And so my question for you all is, how might God be inviting you to be on mission with him right now? With faith, with love in your community, in your family, your place of work, the community that surrounds here, your circle of influence with friends, and to other people that you know. How might God be calling you to go out on mission with him right now? Battle lesson number 3. The battle is really for the heart. It's for the human heart. That's what God is after, is the human heart. And what you see up there is a Roman breastplate. That is what Roman soldiers would wear. And that word breastplate, in English, it's a fine word to describe that, but I actually kind of prefer the Spanish word. And I'll explain why. The Spanish word is coraza. Coraza. And because the Spanish word for heart is corazón. And so the coraza is what covers and protects the heart. In fact, you're amongst friends, loved ones, family. We're going to try a little Spanish lesson this evening. It came out on Tuesday night. Let's get your money's worth out of it. Okay, so on the count of 3, we're going to say coraza together. All right, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Coraza. Coraza. It covers the heart. And so for years, we kept hearing and seeing the need for men's ministry in Spain. We kept hearing from leaders, there just aren't resources to reach out to men in real relevant ways. In fact, there just really aren't any resources for guys. And we see the need in the church. We see the need in society as well, because just imagine what it would be like if the men that you knew were truly good, wholehearted men, becoming more and more like Jesus, with all of the strength that means, and all of the love and compassion that means as well. That would be a complete revolution if the men that we all knew were like that. And so we've been working with Wild at Heart, John Eldridge and that movement, their approach, their ministry, in our local context, to engage, to restore, to strengthen men's hearts. And when we talk about the heart, what we're not just trying to get men to do more in the church. It's good for men to do stuff in the church, but it's not for men to just be more active. It's not just for men to behave right like good Christian men should. The 7 things that every Christian man should be doing, and you're probably not doing half of them, so you're a loser, that sort of thing. It's not about that at all. What this is, it's an invitation to an expedition into their stories, their lives, their hearts, their relationships, and the renewing and redeeming work of Jesus there that's really real, that's really available. And so we've been working in small groups, and encouraging others to use this in small groups. And one of the things that we've been doing, like I mentioned, was the Wild at Heart experience. It's a 6-session video series. Each video is 18 or 20 minutes that tells a man's story and gives some basic teaching about the masculine heart. And we walked our men in our church plant through this. We just dubbed it into Spanish. It's just such a good resource for men. And the men, even the men, there was an ex-cop who's part of our church plant, and when I invited him to come and be a part of this, he said, I don't know, I'll come the first time, we'll see. And I think he was the only one who never missed a meeting, because there was something deep and real and transformative about what was going on through the teaching, but also through the richness of our conversation, our support, our ministry to one another in that small group setting. And so it's actually a totally free resource that you can go on the Wild at Heart website and you can just watch it for yourself, or you can do it in a small group. It's beautiful. But we've also been organizing retreats centered around the message of Wild at Heart, which is just the gospel, but told in a way that makes sense for men and for the masculine heart. And I could tell you a lot of stories that have come out of our retreats, but let me tell you just one. And we'll call the guy Dan, just to protect his identity a bit. But a month after our first retreat in 2023, I got a text message from a friend in northern Spain. And he said, I don't know if you know this guy, Dan, but he was a guy who came to your retreat. There were 60-some guys who were there, so I didn't know all of them. But he came to your retreat, and it just completely turned his world upside down. I said, oh, well, what do you mean? He said, oh, you didn't know. So Dan came to our retreat really just looking to get away from ministry because he is a pastor, to get away from his wife, to get away from his family. And in the second, and that's what he told me later in his own words, and in the second or the third session of our retreat, Jesus confronted him. And he said, you're leading a double life, and I know it. And you've got a choice to make, and here's your opportunity. Dan was leading a secret life of sexual addiction. He was deep into it. And it was about to destroy his life, his ministry, and everything. And so he went home after the retreat. He confessed everything to his wife, to his family, to his church. And he willingly gave up ministry, gave up pastoral ministry, at least for a season, so that he could get his heart back, so that he could get his integrity back, so that he could win his wife's heart back, so that he could get his family back, so that he could be the man that God was calling him and inviting him to be, without that secret double life that he was living. And he's done it, and Jesus has done it in him. The Holy Spirit has been doing phenomenal things in his life with the help of a counselor, some deep heart work that he's done with us as well. And I told you that so I could tell you Luke 4 is a reality, brothers and sisters. Luke 4, where Jesus kind of gives his mission statement, where he says, Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has sent me to proclaim good news to the poor. He's anointed me and sent me to proclaim that the blind will see, that captives will be released, the brokenhearted, I'm going to bind their hearts up again and heal them. The oppressed are going to be set free. Dan and other men have lived that because Jesus is doing it. And we're with him in this battle for men's hearts, helping men fight for and recover their hearts and their integrity and the life that Jesus has for them. And I just wonder, how might Jesus be inviting you to fight for the hearts of people around you? Men, fight for your wife's heart. Women, sometimes we men need you to fight for our hearts as well. Perhaps fight for your kids' hearts, even if they're adult children. Maybe you're in a place where you need to fight to recover your own heart because there's pain and there's maybe just some spiritual death going on there that Jesus wants to get rid of and resurrect places in your own heart and your own story. And so God is coming after men's and women's hearts in Spain, I would say like never before. And we get to be a part of it. And you guys, actually, you're a part of it. You are. You give. You pray for us. And when I think about you, I'm just blown away at your faithfulness and how you've been giving to us for years. And you're not giving to us, you're giving to Jesus' mission in Spain and the mission of coming after men's and women's hearts and transforming people who desperately need the gospel at all levels in their lives, whether they've never heard of Jesus before or they have a misguided understanding of who Jesus is, or people who've known Jesus for a long time, but they need to experience the restoration that he has for them. You are a part of that, and so thank you. Thank you for being a part of what Jesus is doing with us and in us and through us in Spain. And just as a little thank you, back on the table by the door there, we've got our latest prayer card. That's the image that you saw at the beginning with the updated version of us. But there's also a magnet so that you can stick it on the fridge for whatever you reach for in the fridge. No judgment on that. You're amongst friends. But it says here, battling in prayer for hearts in Spain with the Witakers. And it looks like a little shield. just to remind you that we are in a battle, and you are a part of that with us. And we're so, so grateful for how you've supported us. And if you're a part of Christ House Church, well, you can be a part of it as well. Whether you give, whether you pray, whether you write us a note and encourage us every once in a while, or there's also a place where you can sign up back there and put your email address, or we have a Facebook group. It's a closed group that if you send me a message on Facebook, look me up, you can be a part of that. We send out more regular messages because sometimes we have needs. Like this week, our daughter is in Kentucky serving, and she needs prayer. And in fact, I would ask you to pray specifically for her right now. She struggles with a little bit of anxiety, and it's kind of acting up right now. And so if you would remember to pray for Miriam, just that she would experience Jesus' peace during this week, being away from us. Her family is the one constant that she has in her life. She says a lot of goodbyes to a lot of people. And so when she's not with us, that can sometimes cause a little bit of anxiety in her. And so we would, just ask you to pray for her. And she told us, we talked with her earlier this evening, that she's experiencing anxiety, but this morning Jesus gave her a word, and he told her, look, I'm giving you my peace, just receive it. And so pray that she would be able to receive that deeply into her heart. So do I have time for just one more little point? Maybe one more story? So we are in a love story set in the context of a fierce war. And Satan's attacks will become personal. And there will be battle wounds in the midst of this war that we live in. 2023 was a hard year for us, for me in particular. In addition to developing Wild at Heart and this men's ministry in Spain, and also serving as part of the leadership team for our mission organization, European Christian Mission in Spain, leading 50, 60 missionaries spread throughout the country. I was serving as one of the 6 pastoral elders of our local church. No pastor, just a pastoral team, elders, and I was one of them. And throughout the year of 2023, there were just mounting tensions within the church, particularly against us as elders. The church had kind of stagnated, and we were working on developing a new vision to revive and reignite a passion for discipleship and life-giving growth and evangelism in small groups in the church. And there was a small but powerful group in the church that was not very happy with us, with how we were going about things. They'd been there for a long time. They didn't like certain things about what we were proposing and what we were doing. And not only could we feel the tension mounting in the church in certain meetings and certain contexts like that, it turns out that afterwards we found out that there was kind of a smear campaign going on behind the scenes, water cooler, parking lot conversations, those sorts of things. But for me, the worst part it wasn't just the mounting tension in the church. It was what I was hearing coming out of my heart and mouth throughout the year. Because like Jesus says, out of the heart the mouth speaks, right? Can we be honest here? Okay. When I thought about the church, or when people ask, how are things going at church? What I most felt and heard coming out of my mouth were these 2 things. First, I just hate church right now. I just hate it. And then the second thing was, you know what? Church sucks. Quite frankly, church just sucks right now. It felt like hard, joyless labor. And I didn't want to feel that way. I knew it wasn't good. Like, I'm an ordained elder in our denomination. Like, most of my gifts are pastoral, and it's really hard to love Jesus and hate his bride. I didn't want to feel that way. But that was just the state, the condition of my worn out, worn down soul towards church. And when you look at Daniel 7:25, you see that one of the enemy's strategies is to wear down and wear out the saints. And that's where I was. And so September 2023, the thing just exploded. If you remember, a year before that, September 2022, had this word from Jesus about battle. And September 2023, the thing explodes. There are personal attacks against the elders. There are personal attacks against me as well. And without going into too many details, by the end of October, the other 5 elders and I stepped down as elders in the hopes of avoiding a church split. One of the Sundays, we as a family remained in the church. One of the Sundays, I was there in the worship service, and I couldn't pay attention to the sermon that morning. I don't know if that happens to you ever. Hopefully not, because you might shatter Pastor Tim. No, but I was there. I could not pay attention for the life of me, and then my mind began to wander a bit, and it wasn't actually wandering. I think Jesus was leading me, because he said, you know what, it's not just this hard church situation that you've gone through, but remember the one in eastern Spain, in Castellón, several years ago? And don't forget about the one in Pennsylvania when you were serving as a youth pastor there. And what about that one in New Jersey when you were fresh out of college and youth ministry and you went through a really hard time? What about that church split that happened in your home church in Illinois when you were still in college? You just kind of moved on from these things. And then all of that came with a question and an invitation. And Jesus asked me, would you let me into the pain of all of those hard church situations? And so I got in touch with a friend of mine who is a spiritual director, and I just asked him to pray with me and help lead me through prayer to process some of this with Jesus. And he said, sure, I would love to do that, but I think if you want to invite Jesus into this, what you need to do is to write a psalm of lament about your relationship with the church and all of these hard experiences. In the book of Psalms, there are 150 psalms. About a third of them either are a lament or contain some sort of lament. You need to write your own about this, and then we'll invite Jesus into it. And so we met again several weeks later, and I'd written my psalm of lament about my relationship with the church, about the difficulties, about the weight and the hurt and the pain. And I read it out loud in front of my friend, the spiritual director, and I read it in prayer to Jesus, and then we just invited Jesus into that. And in prayer, I can't tell you everything that Jesus told me and showed me, but I'll tell you 2 things that Jesus told me. The first thing had an image attached. And he just gave me the image of the scars, the healed scars on his wrists. And he said, I am the wounded healer. And this is part of you becoming a wounded healer with me. And it was this sense that this was not pure accident. I was not alone in my pain. This was something that Jesus was leading me through, and that he had purpose in it for me. I'm the wounded healer, and I'm inviting you to be a wounded healer with me through this. And then he gave me the image of a wide flowing river, and he gave me these words. He said, stay with me, and this river will cleanse you, will heal you, and will fill you again. And then he brought to mind Psalm 23:2. He leads me. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. And that's what he's been doing. He's been restoring and healing my heart, my relationship with his church ever since. So much so that we're actually involved in starting a new church, a new expression of his body in our town, in Meco. And I told you all that so I can tell you this. Yes, we are in a love story that's set in the context of a fierce war that is mostly against our hearts. And we will be wounded in this battle. But if you're here and you are carrying wounds and pain in your heart, you need to hear this and you need to receive it. Jesus will meet you and heal you in that place of pain if you invite him in. He is the wounded healer, and he invites us to be wounded healers with him. If we will just invite him into those places in our lives and in our hearts, so that he can make us, he can heal us, so that we can be those wounded healers with him. and meet the world at its deepest point of pain as well. So thank you, friends, for coming out on a Tuesday evening to listen to me talk, to be a part and know a little bit more about what Jesus is doing in us and through us and with us in Spain. And we're so grateful for you all. So yeah, I don't know if,
I think we can take a little bit of time, not long, but
yeah.
I did say if you had some questions you want to ask, and obviously when we end the service, you don't have to like race out the door, but any questions you'd like to ask PJ while we've got him here? As you were listening, just questions about things he brought up or questions about things he didn't. You mentioned that, is it, how do you say it, Miko? Is that the name of the town?
Yeah, Meko.
Mako.
Yeah,
So, okay.
Meko.
Mako, I'll have to work on that. There's no evangelical church there before what you guys are doing. Has there been in the past? And if so, how long ago since they had anything?
Right. So, Meko is a church or a town of 16,000. The predominant traditional religion is Roman Catholicism in Spain, so there is a very large structure of a Catholic church that's there. But as far as evangelical Christianity, we know of one attempt several years ago to plant some sort of a church, but it was short-lived. And so that's what we know. I don't know of any other attempt to plant anything. And those believers, I have no idea where they ended up. So there actually are like believers living in the town, but nothing established in the town, which is so important, particularly in Spanish towns. I can't speak for Lancaster County necessarily, but in Spanish towns, for there to be a point of reference that people can see and something that's actually in the town so that they don't have to travel elsewhere is vital. It's just how Spaniards and their mentality tends to work. Yeah.
Any other questions?
You mentioned that one of the families that's in the church said that they didn't have transportation to go
Yeah.
distances. Is that a common situation for the Spanish families?
Yeah, it can be. Their situation in particular is that they have one car, and they, when the husband is working or away and has the car, the wife can't. It's kind of difficult for her to get around. So there are some families that would just have one car and would depend on public transportation, which isn't bad, but like on a Sunday morning can be hard to get certain places for a worship service. So probably more common than here. Yeah, people rely more on public transportation there than they do here. Yeah.
Johnny. What did they eat?
Oh, that's a very good question. So one of the main dishes that we have that's well known is called paella. And I don't have a picture of it, but it's made in kind of a large pan. And this Friday I've been asked to make one for some friends in Lidditz. But it's a rice dish, so it's yellow rice. And the traditional paella comes from where we used to live in Spain, in eastern Spain, and it usually has something that would be like a white butter bean or lima bean, green beans, a kind of a tomato base. So it's yellow, it turns the rice yellow. And then the meat would be rabbit. You don't have to put it in there if you don't like it, but that's traditional. Rabbit, pork, and chicken. And that, you put garlic in it. Yeah, it's delicious. And that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to Friday because we haven't had it in a while. So is that something you'd want to try? Yeah? Even the rabbit? Yeah, it tastes like chicken. Everything tastes like chicken. It's not bad. So it's that's one of the main things. But then, there are a lot of things that we eat over there that, pasta and Italian food is popular there as well. But then you get different kinds of sausages. So we have something called chorizo, which is a kind of sausage. It might be slightly spicy or not very spicy. They have something called blood sausage, and so it's kind of like a dark-colored sausage, and it actually has dried blood in it. that's kind of gross. But some people love it, and you kind of either love it or you hate it. Maybe the weirdest thing that you might, yeah, two of the weirdest things, at least for me. Snails are popular. But they cook them and put them in kind of special sauce. And then the other thing that was, the first time I was in Spain, my mother-in-law made a paella, but it was a seafood paella. And so it had fish, and it had, I don't know what else, octopus and shrimp in it. But the shrimp, the thing is with the shrimp, they don't peel the shrimp for you. They're not clean shrimp. They're cooked shrimp, but you know, the eyes are staring at you before you eat it. Like, and you have to, you know, pull the head off and clean it yourself. So that's a little bit weird. Yeah.
Well, let me ask just a couple detailed questions. How are you guys doing on your support? What are your needs right now?
Right. So just like you all know, inflation is a real thing. And so we're doing all right. Support-wise, yeah, we are hoping to raise an extra $200 a month this summer to help with inflation and all of that. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now.
Because I know we've got some folks, obviously St. Paul supports you, Christ House does not.
Yeah.
But I know some of our Christ House folks individually support different missionaries. Is that all that information available on your prayer
Yeah, all of that information is back there. There's like a card that if you want to support a one-time gift or a recurring gift, yeah, all of that's back there.
And then my last question for you was just, so have you got a word on your heart for this next 3-year?
I haven't gotten there yet. Yeah, I've got a word for this year, but that's for me personally. But as far as probably on the plane in St. Louis again, I'll ask Jesus, and I'll let you know. But yeah, right now it's just we're in the midst of summer. Yeah.
We know to be praying for Miriam
right
now. Any other specific requests for this summer that we can be praying for you?
Yeah, two things come to mind. One would be for us personally. The next month is going to be super intense. We're trying to take advantage of the next month that we have here in this area because the majority of our support and our friends are in this area. So we'll speak like another 15 times or so, and we'll be at a camp meeting, and we're at this church or that church, just for stamina, but also margin to be able to rest in the middle of all of it. But we enjoy this. It just, for me, I don't mind it so much because I'm usually the one up here speaking. Our daughters, after about the third time of hearing me say the same thing, they're like, "Daddy, we pretty much have it memorized." I said, "Great, so next time you can give it." No, that's not what we mean. Stamina in that way, I think, as well. The second thing would be for our church community back in Meco. They're getting through the summer without us, which they're doing all right. But in the next couple weeks, they have kind of an outreach planned. I have no idea what that looks like, what's going to go on there, but pray that there would be conversations about Jesus at least.
Yeah. Well, let me come pray for you.
Yeah, please
and
do.
I encourage others as we're done here, if you had another question I didn't let you share, come grab it.
Yeah.
So let's pray. Father, you are good and you are faithful. Over and over, we're just reminded of our dependence upon you and your sufficiency. And so it's with great confidence and joy we put BJ and Rachel and their whole family in your hands. We lift up their church and each of the members that are there and the folks that they will be meeting. Would you provide for their needs? Would you open doors for the gospel? In this season they're in right now, where they get to be back stateside with us and other folks around the county and around the country, I pray that the work of visiting different churches and casting a vision and sharing what you've laid on their hearts would be something that is encouraging for them as a family. And as they meet different people and go in different settings, especially with all the repetitions, give them stamina to not get lost in that, but to still see the unique new faces and to see how you're working through them, to be encouraged by that. I pray that they would find special times as a family just to be together as a family, to rest while they're pulled aside for a little bit, that they would go back refreshed with hearts full. We want to intercede specifically for Miriam right now. We're excited that she's out on her own, joining in a ministry, not with her whole family, but just with other youth in another church. I just pray that that'll be a really encouraging time for her. I pray as she wrestles through anxiety and things. God, this is something she's faced before, and so I pray this would be kind of a milestone moment as she sees your sufficiency to walk with her, with other believers, but not always having the same support she usually does. So bless her today especially. And I want to pray for the church back in Spain. I know it's easy when you have a leader you depend on to think you can't do stuff without them. And so as they step out and do outreach without some of their supports, I pray that you would just bless them beyond their expectations so that they would see the strength and the powers in your gospel and in you, and that you're with them, that they have all that they need to be your witnesses. And so that it would raise up more confident leaders, that fresh folks in the congregation get a new passion and vision for how you might want to use them in the future, so that when the Witakers go back, they get to hear testimonies of your power and your grace. So I pray that you would open doors for the gospel. We pray for the lost to be stirred to seek you, and that you would bring new people into your family. We ask this all in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. All right, thank you all for coming out. As I said, make sure you grab some of the stuff and check out his display. And while he's here, ask him your questions.
Thank you.